ready to go. I'll just mute this. Okay. And it looks like we have some viewers already as well. So, good afternoon, everybody on the World Wide Web. Welcome to another West Coast Jazz Hour, our 20th episode. So we sort of are celebrating a anniversary today. Of course, myself and co-host Josh Nelson are welcoming you to these very, very fine musical moments. And for our special 20th birthday celebration, we have a very special guest today, a drummer who I have been admiring for a very, very, very long time. He had a long-standing relationship with the great legendary piano player Bill Evans. He has played with West Coast jazz musicians such as Conte Candoli, Lennie Niehaus. The list is very, very long for this gentleman. So today we're welcoming drummer and educator Joe LaBarbera. Welcome, Joe, and thanks for being here with us.
My pleasure, Kevin and Josh. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, for sure. So usually how we start things off, Joe, is that I basically ask, when did you move to LA and what was the reason why you moved to LA?
I moved to Los Angeles in 1987. I had just been recently divorced, and my ex and my daughter were living in Phoenix, Arizona, and I knew if I went back to New York City, I wouldn't have the time with my daughter. So I had been to Los Angeles many times starting in the early 70s, and I just thought, let me go out there and see if I can make something happen. And it worked out great because I was able to get Tiffany on a regular basis and most of the summer. And so our relationship stayed very solid. And she lives here now with her husband in Altadena. So uh, that's the main reason, was just to be closer to her.
Right. And who was when you moved out here and when you settled here? Who were some of the first cats that started to call you when you moved to town?
Well, the first person to call me, believe it or not, was Hein van de Geyn from Hein. Hein had been after me for a long time because he had this idea for a band, and I was never available because I was still working with Tony Bennett. When I stopped working with Tony, then I started going to Europe with Hein and John Abercrombie. We had a trio for a number
Ah,
called Baseline, and then we had a John Rocco on clarinet and saxophone. So that was one of the first ones. But as far as the local players here, I started working almost immediately with like Lou Levy and Bill Perkins, and Jack Nimitz, and then gradually Conte Candoli and Bud Shake. Then Bud had been calling me for years too, to go and play with him. So now I was available for that. So those were some of the first ones that I got to play with and record with.
yeah, I saw that list that you sent in. You've recorded also a bunch of records with Bud. All right. Well, um, let's get started with listening to some music, I would say. You sent us a track that is from Jerry Mulligan, and actually, I tried to find it also, like from what kind of recording it came from. I wasn't successful with that, but I did find like a recording of John Gross, the French horn player who played that tune, and it's also on a Mel Lewis records. Actually, Mel Lewis and Friends and Company or something like that, where Philly Joe is also playing on. So, what is the story behind this recording?
My brother Pat was instrumental in bringing the music home to my brother John and myself, and he had this jazz sampler that included this track. When people think about West Coast jazz, a lot of times they think of something that might not be as adventurous as this is. Jerry Mulligan he hitchhiked out to Los Angeles in the early '50s because nothing was happening in New York, and when he got here, he put this together among other things. But this is from 1956, I believe. So it's after he'd been here a couple of years. And it's got Larry Bunker on drums
Hmm.
and John Grass, as you say, on French horn. and it's just a very, very challenging piece of music. As you will hear, it's called Mulliganesque.
Yep. I'll play it for you guys right now. And here we go, Mulliganesque.
Uh-oh.
We lost the music, Kev. Ah. Oh boy.
Yeah. I think I glitched out for a second, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, you did.
Hmm.
You're back.
Yeah.
Yeah. My apologies for that. My router decided to
All good.
glitch out for a second. But yeah, that's I can definitely see why it's hard or challenging to play something like that because it's like a pretty extended and kind of through composed piece as well. Not that it's just, like just only progressive in its music, but also really well performed.
Yeah, and if you think about it at the time, I mean, the tracks that we were hearing out of New York, the ones that we were hearing anyway, were typically, head solos, that kind of pop style, whereas this offered a lot more, in terms of a challenge. And I was playing along with these records, when I was a teenager. Uh, the rest of the band is Don Fagerquist on trumpet,
Ah, nice.
Marty Page on piano, Howard
Oh,
Roberts on guitar, and Red Mitchell on the bass. And we became familiar with all of these artists through this record and other records, and so we would individually follow each one of them. Not Marty Page so much, although his writing for sure, but
hmm.
Red Mitchell for sure, and Jerry and Don Fagerquist, and Larry Bunker, of course.
Yeah, yeah. And so did you later on get to play with, like, did you get to play with Mulligan, for example?
I did not, but we knew Jerry Mulligan. When we were kids, uh, we went to New York in 1962, I think it was. Yeah, 62. My parents we used to take holidays together as a family. We had a camp trailer, and so if you can feature this, we're staying at a trailer park in New Jersey, and every night at 7 o'clock, my parents would allow us to take the bus from in front of the trailer park into Port Authority and
Okay.
go to Birdland. My brother Pat was 18, and they realized, that Pat would look out for us. I mean, at the time, it was totally cool. But one of the first things we did when we got to town, my brother Pat, we called Thelonious Monk and we called Jerry Mulligan. Monk, Monk never answered the phone, so that was a waste of time. But Jerry actually answered after a while, and Pat talked to him for a while, and of course over the years, But I never did play with him. Always admired his work.
Wow. It's no big deal. Just call up Jerry Mulligan.
Yeah.
That's something that I can't really imagine.
You had to be young and dumb enough, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess that still goes for me, young and dumb. So,
Nice.
Josh, why don't you take it from here?
Well, thanks. I was gonna play maybe some of the more recent stuff, but I think we should keep on some of the earlier stuff and just go up a little bit more. I'm enjoying stay in this groove a little bit more.
Sure.
Do you mind kind of picking that? Whatever you want to play. There's so many great things you sent, Joe. I mean, maybe just a quick little thank you for your music and you know, I was nervous giving you a call to do a few of the gigs I've had you on, and giving me a chance to play with you. It's just been great, and
We've had some great musical moments together.
really have,
Hopefully
yeah. So,
more in the future.
and the more recent one that was a big thing for me was the Dave Brubeck 50th anniversary of his Time Out record, and had the pleasure of having you play with me with the quartet at San Diego Symphony, and we played the whole record in order from beginning to end, and I'll never forget that memory with you. So thank you
Thank you.
so much.
It's a pleasure, and I cherish that evening as well.
Oh, that was so much fun. Hard to top that one. Yeah.
I've unfortunately missed that. I wasn't around in San Diego at that
Yeah.
time. I remember that you guys did that, though. I remember that.
Yeah, the great Gilbert Castellanos, the trumpet player, he's curated the jazz series for the symphony for a while now and brought us down. And they also did, because it's the same year, Kind of Blue, Miles Davis. That was the 50th. So pretty cool. Yeah.
Okay,
What are you going to play,
cool.
Kev?
Let's see what I have here on my list. Well, since we are in a Mulligan vibe, let's stay in the Mulligan vibe, for example. And Joe, we already talked about this before we went live about Lady Chatterley's mother. Um, uh, incredible Alcone composition that he wrote for the Jerry Mulligan Concert Jazz Bands, which was at the time mentioned by Downbeat as the top big band in the world, because it was just before Mel started the big band with Thad, or a couple of years before that. So why don't we listen to this piece first, and then we'll talk about it for a little bit. I think this is like about an 8-minute track, so I'll play like maybe the first 5 minutes of it.
ridiculous.
I just thought, what the hell? I'm just gonna play the entire track.
Why not?
I'm glad you did because the point where I put my finger up, that was
Uh-huh.
that was the original ending to that chart.
Oh,
That's where it originally
Ah,
ended. I told you before we went on the air that I spent an evening with Mel back in like 1982, maybe,
yeah.
up at his house. We both had the night off, and he pulled out all of these reel-to-reel tapes of himself with Basie's band, with Maynard's band, with Woody's band, with all the bands, And I mentioned how much I enjoyed that arrangement. He said, that chart originally ended where I said it did. And the guys in the band went to Al Cohn and said, it's too short. We want more. So he added those 2 or 3 additional courses. And that's the chart we all know and love.
wow.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in reference to what you were saying about Thad and Mel's band starting after this band, it's absolutely true. But the reason they started is because Jerry disbanded the concert jazz band, and the guys in the band all wanted to keep playing. So Mel was instrumental in this, and Clark Terry was instrumental in this, and I'm not sure who else in that band, but eventually it became the Thad Jones Mel Lewis Orchestra.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's like maybe 60. I don't. When was this
60, I
recorded?
think.
That's 1960 right there.
Right. I think there's this whole string of recordings from the European tour that this band actually did. They have one from Paris. They have one in Zurich. I have a bootleg that is from Stockholm. In Holland, the Dutch Jazz Archive released a recording live from Amsterdam a year ago. I think like maybe like shortly thereafter, the band was disbanded.
There's
Jerry
quite
said,
a
like,
catalog of recordings that they did in the States that are out there.
yeah,
The band was popular for a while, but you can imagine the economics of keeping a big band together and taking it on the road. Ask Jeff
yeah,
and John Clayton, man.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, yeah. Well, but yeah, we heard Bob Brookmeyer on valve trombone, and I would imagine that the trumpet.
Sounded like Clark.
No, was that Clark?
I
Yeah.
don't like
Oh,
Clark Terry. No?
hmm.
Somebody
I
else?
thought. I thought always that it was like a little. No, it is actually Clark. I thought always that it was sounding a little too aggressive for it to be Clark, but
There were some
he had
Clarkisms in there.
yeah, and he had the solo chair, so like what kind of rubbish am I saying? That was Clark for sure.
Kevin. Clark was young once too, man.
Yeah, true,
I got to play
true.
with Clark Terry when I was 19.
Wow.
I was between school and the army, as it turned out, and I was in Rochester, and a friend of mine, Link Millam, a bass player, got me on this gig with Clark and an organ player named Doug Duke, who had a club in Rochester, and we played a night together. Fabulous.
And you played with Brookmeyer too, right? I know that you're on a recording, a quartet recording with Brookmeyer.
Yeah, we did a fair amount of work with Bob, but the album, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Was that like in the period that I've heard something about Brookmeyer that he was like taking sort of like a sabbatical and that he moved out here and then um, short or when he came out of that sabbatical, he was doing a couple of like recordings here as well. Like he made one with Mel in a quartet setting, which is I believe called like coming back or back again or something like that. That's the first recording that's popping up into my mind that I've heard about, that he was here also to get rid of some bad habits such as alcohol and that kind of stuff.
Well, it's true. He did quit drinking by the time I had met him. He was working with Stan Getz in Stan's band at that time, and then when he moved to New York, then he put the band together with Jack Wilkins and Michael Moore and myself, and that's the band on that recording.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I recognize those names from that recording.
You know what I marvel at, you guys, is that Jerry Mulligan had the ability to get so much sound out of so few players, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he that band in particular, I mean, it sounds huge, and it's a tribute to how creative he was as an arranger. But he was able to achieve the same thing with just a four-piece group, right? Trumpet, Barry, bass, and drums, just through creative voicing and by always picking, a frontline partner who was probably either an arranger like Brookmeyer or Art Farmer, who was, and Chet, who were very adept at just creating counterpoint on the
Hmm.
fly that just fit and filled in all the voids. So
Yeah.
I love about that with Jerry's writing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I recently, because of Putter, I recently listened to Jerry Mulligan featuring Lee Konitz live at the
Yeah.
Hague in '53 with Chet and Larry Bunker and Carson Smith, Putter's brother. And like what you say, the amount of counterpoint that they play with the three horns just on the fly, and they're making like secondary voicings to each other and all of that. And I'm like, it's it's incredible what those guys did.
I don't want to date myself, but I mean, it's like it's too late now anyway, right? But I mean, that's the kind of skill that your average club day player back east would have, and probably out here too. You could get like bands like or club day band leaders like Meyer Lansky, not Meyer Lansky. Who am I saying? He's a gangster. Uh, um, the piano. Anyway, Carmen Cavallero. Those
Oh,
club day band leaders. They had a list of 150 or 200 musicians that they could call and put a band together and send them out with no music, and they could make arrangements on the spot. And that's coming out of the whole tradition of jazz, where it was a polyphonic or collective improv experience. Musicians had to be able to improvise and create their own arrangements on the spot. So that's part of that experience, but it's not happening that much anymore. It's just kind of a dying art or a
yeah.
death.
Seems like a lost art now. And there's everything that's it's either charted or there's more featured soloists, and yeah, there's not as much counterpoint that's just improvised. That's a really good point. And I love that first Mulligan track you played or that you selected too, Joe. That these little sections of um, solo moments. It wasn't always this whole expose. It was these chunks. We've talked about that on the show before, Kevin, with the arranging style of Marty Page and Bill Holman and Johnny Mehldau.
Hmm.
It's just a beautiful tradition that I feel like sometimes is missing sometimes, in current arrangement. It's
Yeah,
an older sound, older style, but it's definitely shows how adept and accomplished these musicians are, like you say, Joe. Just incredible, you know.
yeah. The thing that I'm sometimes missing nowadays, which I'm hearing a lot in the West Coast stuff, and so some people they find that like a negative thing. I don't, but with the people that you mentioned, like Holman and Marty Page, and also Al Cohn, the arrangement that we just heard,
Yeah,
everything is like super emphasized on melody, but it's also very transparent. It's very simple sounding, but it isn't. Like
right.
like I've played that arrangement actually myself with the band, and I've heard from a couple people, like Kim Richmond was playing lead alto at the time, and he was like, that arrangement is hard to play. But so it gives you the impression that it's sounding simple, but to actually play it is pretty challenging. And that's,
Right.
I think, the mistake that, and so you've pointed out also, Joe, in the first example, like it might sound simple what those people are doing, but it's actually quite hard, like quite challenging, those kind of compositions to play.
Yeah,
Right.
I totally agree. Totally agree.
Yeah,
But it
but
doesn't be relegated to an older style either. I mean, if you think about something like a band like the Yellow Jackets, for example, I mean,
Hmm.
you're there are there are solo events, but there are arrangements built around those solo
That's
events.
true.
So
Yeah.
totally.
the hip musicians are always they're going to use the same techniques. They're just going to update it with
Right.
style.
Good point.
Right.
Yeah.
Should I pick something, Josh or Joe? Do you want to pick something from what you've played, or
Uh,
what you picked?
I'll have to take a look at my list now.
Yeah, sure. I just while you're looking, Joe, maybe I'll mention some folks that are here watching. We have Carmen Bradford's here. Hey, Carmen.
Carmen, listen, Carmen, I got to shout out to Carmen because we used to work with Basie's band all the time,
Yeah.
Tony Bennett, and I would go out front and listen to Carmen sing every night.
Oof.
Love her singing. Hey, Carmen,
Too.
good to see
Hey,
you.
Carmen. I've had the chance to play with her a few times, and she's an amazing artist. Dick Nash is here.
Dick.
Melinda, yes. Steve
Hey, Dick.
Korn, the drummer from Seattle, great drummer.
Who was that?
Steve Korn,
Oh my God, man! I've
you
known.
know Steve?
Yes, of
Cat
course.
and Sip are here.
Oh,
Cat Sip,
cool.
Yo Sip, and Yo Cat.
Matt
Drum.
Wilson.
Oh, we got Matt.
Matt, wait a minute. We're going coast to coast here.
Yep.
Yep.
The
Good
beauty of technology.
time. Anyway, just yeah.
I've seen that Matt Wilson has actually. By the way, Matt, I'm a very big admirer of yours, but shout out to him because he actually watched a few of our interviews. He's dropped in
Yes.
on quite a few of them. So thank you for that. Where should we? Let me see
Well,
what I actually.
I've
What
been
the?
I've been calling the shots all day. I've been teaching, so you guys.
All right. Good to know.
Okay.
Um,
Should we do like a ballad? What about the Peacocks? Is that okay?
sure,
Kind of jump forward in time a bit here,
of course.
and then we can go back to some other stuff. Yeah.
Should I play it here from my end?
Do you have it ready?
Yep.
Cool. Sure.
All right.
So this is Gary Foster on flute, John Hurt on bass, Jimmy Rolls, the composer himself, on piano, and Joe LaBarbera, our special guest today, on drums. What year is this from, Joe?
I will tell you right now.
78,
It's
80?
1991.
91.
Wow.
All
Yeah.
right. Here we
And as
go.
much as you want to play, Kev.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Cool. love that. I love how you guys are so free with it, and how it's just melody. Playing that tune a fair amount myself. I never quite know what to play on it, so I end up just playing the melody, or because it's so beautiful and it doesn't feel like it needs a lot. So I hadn't heard that version. Of course, I've heard your version, Joe, with Bill Evans, some on the video there from I think 75 or late somewhere in there.
That would have been 78 or
70. Oh, a little later. Yeah.
I was looking. I had Jimmy's original lead sheet in my piano bench, but I got so many books on it I can't get at it right now. But
Gary Foster gave me the one that he thought was the original. He get a copy.
Yeah.
To see all his voicings, and I found that very helpful.
Gary's sound is just sublime, honestly.
Yeah.
What a joy to hear that guy play again.
Yeah.
And John Hurd always a groove to play with. I mean, this obviously doesn't feature bass or drums that much, but
right.
Always supportive. Jimmy Rolls and I worked together on both coasts. We met in New York. We were both working with Zoot Sims around 1977, maybe some time in there, with Frank Tate on bass. And then after I moved out here, he moved back to LA, and then we started to work together out here. But I've always been a fan of Jimmy Rolls, and I was introduced to his music through Jerry Mulligan, because Jerry did this whole series of recordings called Jerry Mulligan Meets Johnny Hodges, Jerry Mulligan Meets Stan Getz. Well, he finally one day met Ben Webster, and he got Jimmy Rolls on the piano, and Jimmy just knocked me out on that recording. And so I was so fortunate to get a chance to play with him. And
yeah, that's one of, probably, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful ballads ever written. Peacocks.
Yeah, sure is. And I'm glad you shared that, Joe. It was really nice. A lot of open space, and it's beautiful to hear you play in that style.
That's kind of my thing. I mean, I get as much pleasure, probably more, but equal amount of joy doing that as I get out of taking a solo. Honestly, It's always been like that. And obviously, Bill's trio gave me that opportunity, but here's an example of Gary recognizing and Jimmy recognizing that's something that I could do, and allowing me to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. More going for setting a vibe. That's at least what I got from it. Like cymbal swells, and and then at some point it goes into like a time thing, and then it goes out of it again. It's super cool. Super cool.
I'm sure you can relate to this, Kevin, because for drummers, it's frightening to give up the time, to turn that responsibility over to somebody else. But when you do it, it's totally liberating, man. And once you've experienced it, and then you have players like these guys who you can put your trust in, you're going to be okay. It's not going to lead you astray.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily on my list, but we can actually show, because you put a track in from the Mulligan Meets Webster recording. You put that in the list, which I can definitely play. I love that. I love that record too, because it has Mel also on drums. I forgot who's the bass player on that record.
Roy Vinegar.
Oh, cool.
Right on. So we can go right ahead into listening to that one. Where is it?
What track did I pick?
Tell Me When.
Oh, yeah. Great. Although it's two ballads back to back, I got to warn you, right? So.
Yeah, we can do whatever we want.
Come on.
Yeah, here we go. Tell Me When, Jerry Mulligan Meets Ben Webster. there are two things that blew my mind on this recording, which was how Mulligan and how Ben Webster can't play a melody like that. And also the second thing that just knocked me over was the way how Leroy Vinegar and Mel are playing in two and they stay there, like the way how they do it. I was like, good Lord, who does that nowadays anymore, you know?
Well, yeah. Again, it's a sign of the times, right? I think if you take that to today's musical styles. I mean, musicians are doing the job based on what they're being presented with, right? I mean, that's always been the way it goes for all of us, right? So, in this particular case, music was asking these guys to do that particular thing, and maybe today we're being asked to do something a little bit different. But
Right.
it's it's the process is the same.
Hmm.
Jazz hasn't changed all that much.
Right.
Not to get too philosophical or start preaching to you guys, but all I can say is I'm so glad that Jerry Mulligan met Ben Webster because then I got to meet Ben Webster. I had no idea who this guy was. I knew who Jerry Mulligan was, so we went there. And I mean, Ben Webster has been my favorite tenor player probably my entire life because he put so much personality into his sound. I mean, yes, he did adopt or adapt Johnny Hodges' alto techniques and style to the tenor, but still, it comes out sounding like Ben Webster, and I just love his playing, man.
Yeah, and Webster was out here on the West Coast for quite a while. I run into his name on I don't know how many records.
Yeah, I was reading in, it might have even been, I'm not sure if it was Shelley Mann's book, but he drove back to New York with one of the cats out here at some point. But yeah, or maybe it was vice versa. Maybe he came out here. I think that might have been it. Yeah, of course that's not how it was because when Shelley lived in New York, not to get off the mark here, but when Shelley lived in New York and he and Flip were first getting together, Ben Webster took Shelley under his wing and was taking him to all the jam sessions as a teenager on 52nd Street.
Mhm.
Shelley enlisted in the Coast Guard, and when he was out to sea on duty, Ben Webster would meet Flip at the stage door of Radio City Music Hall, where she was a rockette, and escort her home every night. So because she had to walk down 52nd Street in a single woman by herself. So I mean, they had a bond, and I think Ben Webster was actually the first artist that Shelley booked in the Manhole when they opened the club over on
Oh wow. Yeah.
That's a killing story.
That's
That's really
amazing.
cool.
I didn't know
Yeah,
that connection. Wow.
yeah. I found a couple of records where Ben Webster is on. There's this one record by Buddy Breckman that comes to mind, big band leader, Swinging Kicks, and it has Alvin Stoller on drums.
Mm.
And the last tune that they do is just duo piano and Ben Webster. It might be even Jimmy Rolls. It might be Jimmy Rolls, or I would say Lou Levy, one of those two guys, and just duo. And it's a piece that Buddy wrote, duo between Ben Webster and a piano player. And it, in my opinion, might be like the best tune of the whole big band record.
yeah.
But that's a killing record. But I mean, I would say that you were getting off topic with Shelley because you also had something from Shelley to show, which is called, let me see, You Name It.
Oh yeah,
Um,
great.
do you know from which recording that's coming from?
From Boss Sounds, which
Oh yeah, Boss Sounds.
I bought that album at Jack's Drum Shop in Boston when I was still in Berkeley. Jack
Uh-huh.
Adams had Jack's Drum Shop. That's where I bought my first set of Gretsch, by the way. And he had it on the counter, and I bought it. And it just showed how Shelley always kept pace. Always was moving ahead. And the arrangements on this are another example of the arranger's craft. And usually I think Russ Freeman did most of the arranging for the band. This is Russ's arrangement and his composition. And about 25 years ago, when I did the first tribute to Shelly Manne out here, Russ was still alive. And I asked him, do you by any chance have that chart? And he said, I don't know, I'll take a look. And he went and he said, I couldn't find it. But oh, and I know what it was. He was living in Vegas, but he was still with us. So he said, I couldn't find it, but I got a package in the mail with the chart. He had pulled the LP out, put it on, and taken it down by hand from listening to the record.
Wow.
And it's tough to play. I tried to play it with a band down at the last West Coast Jazz Party, and we got through it. But I mean, even the guys later were saying, "Man, we need another shot at that." Check it out. What I like about this record, besides the music, is the fact that I got to know Shelly. Of course, I played with Conte Candoli.
Yeah.
Monty Budwig and I used to play tennis together. In fact, one of the first sessions I did out here when I got to LA was with Jimmy Rolls and Monty Budwig on the bass. It was a beer commercial for Japan.
That's funny. Well,
Go
I mean,
figure.
yeah. And they couldn't get anybody good for that beer commercial?
Yeah, gee. Hope you got some free beer out of it.
That's right. All right, let's give a listen to you name it, Shelly Manne. gotta stop it there.
Okay.
On the bass solo? Come on,
Yeah.
man.
I'm just going to step out of the picture here for a second so you can see.
Oh,
Oh, darn, it didn't come in all the way. Pity.
oh,
It's me and Flip and Russ from the
oh,
jazz.
yeah.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
I thought I could put that picture up there, but apparently I
It
can't.
kind of cropped
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
yeah. It doesn't fall
But
completely
that's
into the
cool to
frame.
see. Yeah, Russ. God, he sounds good.
How did Shelley influence your playing, Joe?
In every conceivable way, really. In terms of sound, in terms of dynamic, in terms of musicality, in terms of just killing swing, he had it all. I mean, and he also opened my eyes to a range of playing, right? Because
Mm,
where I just did that thing on that track, he's building, and also bap, he does a rim shot and brings the dynamic down and lets it build again. And he's always thinking orchestration,
Mm-hmm.
or in terms of just making it move, right? So
mm.
yeah, for sure, in all of those ways, and plus the fact that he was a band leader and did a great job. I always loved his bands, every one of them.
Hmm.
Particularly the way he would always find the best trumpet players. I mean, he had Stu Williamson, then he had Joe Gordon, then he had Count, and then he had uh, um, Mike Barone's brother Gary. He always
Gary.
always had great
Mm.
musicians. Great trumpet players for some. Anyway.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love the way, like every time when I hear Shelley, especially in a small group setting, the thing that completely grabs me is like his edge, like that. Always when I hear him play, there's like this certain kind of edge, this drive that's under it that is very, very, very unique to him, and he always has also these very unique and original phrases that he comes up with, and he's also such a creative drummer, but phrases that he comes up with to comp behind the soloist, like just like what he did in this one also, that he just crashes the hi-hat a couple of times. And like I hear a lot how Philly Joe would do that, like on B2, but then he takes it a little step further, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, he always had a great imagination and always had a sense of purpose in his drumming.
Yeah.
But his melodic phrasing absolutely caught my ear. And early on, he used quite a bit of the same language that the bop guys were all using, except that he would displace it. He would move it, or maybe just alter it just enough to make it personal. I don't know, really. Can't can't speak that deeply about it, but all I can say is that he had a huge impact on me.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can hear that in your playing, that you
Mm-hmm.
displace stuff, like when you do when you're playing behind when you're playing behind a soloist, that, and you can totally correct me if I'm wrong, but every time when I've heard you play, and I always make it, like a priority, like when I see somewhere that you're playing, then I always try to go and see you play. Um, that you're always complimenting and also answering to what the soloist is playing. Like it's never like rhythmic foreshadowing of what the soloist is doing, but it's always like an answer, like a Q&A game that I hear with you. And sound wise, like I think that you have one of the most beautiful drum sounds that I've ever heard. And then stylistically wise, that what you do, that displacement stuff as well, that just like is one on one to me.
Hmm.
Well, that's enough. Then I gotta go. I can't. Thank you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. Here's the thing. I get the greatest pleasure when, of course, when a musician like yourself recognizes this. When just a fan from the audience who maybe is hearing jazz for the first or second time comes up to me after the gig and will say something like, "I could tell you were really listening to everybody in the band." That means a lot to me, because it
Mm.
proves that what I'm trying to do is coming across, because it's not always impressive technically. In fact, it's seldom impressive technically, but it is musical, and it's as musical as I can make it, and that's
Mm.
really what I've been striving for since the beginning.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that totally makes complete sense to me for sure. Josh, do you want to play something
Sure.
perhaps?
Yeah. Can I? Let me share the sound, Kev.
Yeah.
Thank you. So this is a session that I don't often play things that I'm on, but I'm tempted on our show here, but I'm tempted to do that now with just a little piece of a track that you were a part of, along with myself and Tom Warrington and Larry Kuntz, and it was Carl Saunders' record that features Larry Kuntz.
Great.
And I have some just thoughts about Larry, and maybe your couple questions about teaching in academia with as it relates to the jazz world and Cal Arts. And but before we get into that, let's just listen to a short track here. It just came out last year. I believe it's on Summit Records. And this is a tune by Carl Saunders, the trumpet player, and it's called Diddy Bop. Diddy Bop. Listen to Larry Kuntz play all day long, if you ask me. But our featured guest is Joe LaBarbera, and that was him on drums with the great Tom Warrington on bass, and I was lucky enough to be a part of that session on that Carl Saunders tune, Diddy Bop. And I think just leading from the comment you made, Joe, about Shelley and how he was able to sculpt the track, the head in for that track. And this was a session that we just saw the music, I think, that day. We were just putting it together. But the way you sculpted that dynamically and the choices you made, I find it super engaging. And I could have just stopped there with the end of the head, you know. To me, I hear a jazz education in just the way you sculpted that. And just masterful playing, you know, and an odd bar or, you know, kind of an extended form thing. And you've been teaching it at Cal Arts now for many years with Larry Kuntz. I was just curious, might be kind of a difficult question to answer in a short amount of time, but um, Kevin and I both being a part of educational programs in the jazz world, what do you think, generally speaking, right now are things that work in at jazz education in a university setting, and things that might be improved on to kind of maximize the student's experience? Because that's something that comes up a lot in teaching privately, where things that are natural to maybe us, where we were just talking about listening to recordings and kind of getting an education from that standpoint. How do you feel? What's the balance for you when you're kind of teaching at CalArts?
Well, the balance is that you don't want to force feed every bit of knowledge into a student. You want to give them the opportunity to discover on their
Right.
own possibilities by presenting them, maybe just an introduction to a particular topic, subject, whatever. Of course, you want to fill in the important gaps, but you've got to encourage the imagination. You've got to encourage the creativity in a student that way, and also reinforce the fact that whatever way they come up with is the right way for that
Mm.
particular moment. There's
Mm.
no, it shouldn't be set up so that if you don't have it together and you're not an absolute badass after 4 years, that you failed somehow, because that's simply not how it's supposed to be. And that's not the way it was in the real world. What works in education system under normal circumstances, and has for the past 26 years of my teaching, I've been up there 27 years now, but
Mm.
what has worked is the fact that schools create an environment where students can be together and have that community and that ability to play together on a regular basis, which used to exist out in the world for people from my generation. I'm not sure how much of that you were able to get, Josh, but it's like when I was coming up, there were so many gigs that you could actually go out and learn how to play better on a job.
Right.
Whereas today, forget it. If you're not a finished product, you're not going to get on the stage somehow.
Right.
That's what does work. We
Yes.
provide an environment, but what can be lacking in a program is this idea that you're going to conceptualize a student's mind. They're going to have to come out sounding like this type of player. And I don't think many schools do that. But, one of the things that we really stress at CalArts is that individuality and the creativity, just trying to nurture that more.
Right. Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, I feel, to kind of answer your question you posed in the middle of that about kind of getting the real world experience on the
Yeah.
bandstand. I mean, I feel like coming into LA from Long Beach State, where I was studying with Cecilia Coleman, she said, I can only teach you so much. You got to go out and play with people. And yes, of course, in the academic setting, I completely agree. The community with the players, that was my favorite part, was to getting to play in the bands. But the jazz scene had so many more clubs back in the late '90s, and you could just show up and even sit in at some of these spots. And it makes me I'm just concerned sometimes about younger players who don't have that necessarily. Of course, they can still get together and do their thing, but things have changed a little bit in that regard as far
They,
as accessibility.
they've changed tremendously, Josh,
Hmm.
and it's going to survive no
Yeah.
matter what, because this music is too strong. You really can't kill it. It's
Right.
too strong of an idea. It's too strong of a concept.
Yes.
Been embraced by the entire world, and it's constantly drawing young talent into it all the time.
Yeah.
Students today are figuring out is a way to stay connected musically right now.
Hmm.
This is what they're figuring out. They're sharpening their technology skills, so when I was coming up, you only had to play your instrument, right, and show up on time and not be a jerk. But now you've got to be able to play. You've got to be able to record. You've got to be able to broadcast. You have to do everything, it seems, as a young
Yeah.
and they're doing it.
Yeah.
because that's how much they want to be a part of this thing, and that's how much they want to keep it going.
Well put.
One day it'll all get back to that place where, we can go and hear these kids play live somewhere. That's my biggest joy, is being able to go out and hear one of my own students perform somewhere.
Mm.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for that. Thank you so much. Yeah, and that was a great joy to get to play that track and listen back to your great playing. And then the new Carl Saunders record is great as well, that we're both a part of.
If I could just comment on that record, first of all, kudos to Carl, because how many musicians do you know that would book a record date to feature somebody else and not play on it?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's much respect musicians
right
in this town have for Larry Kuntz, who is, in my estimation, the most imaginative and deserving of wider recognition guitar player out there. It's all class playing. I mean, it's always, you're going to go somewhere with Larry, always. And I actually owe my job at CalArts to Larry, because he introduced me to David Reutzstein back in 1993 when we were flying back from the IAJE convention in San Antonio. And it started right there with a handshake, and bam,
Wow.
7 years later. But I look forward to any chance I get to play with Larry.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
He's been on a number of my records, and I've learned so much from that man. I mean, yeah, incredible. So thank you. When we did that session, actually, I thought Carl was going to be playing, and then he wasn't. And it was just his music, and I was kind of blown away. I was like, wow, how selfless. He just let's do the thing.
Composer. They're all different, and they're all really good.
Yeah. Actually, that record is full of a lot of great ones, and I was having a hard time picking. Flim Flam's another good one we'll have to get to another time. Yeah, you play great on that. Kevin, you got something else you want to show?
Sure. Beautiful words, guys. This is very, very, very inspiring to hear this, exchange of information. I'm learning a lot right now.
Same here.
So thank you for that. Joe, I wanted to show actually the Pete Jolly and Friends recording.
That one.
Yeah, that one that you picked. Toot Toot Tootsie Goodbye. And I have something to ask.
Do I need to? Can you share?
I can share. Yeah. Thank you for reminding me. So here we go. Pete Jolly Trio.
I got to practice.
You
Oh
and
my
me both.
God, jeez, that's a grown-up tempo.
That's for sure.
Oof.
Our amazing Chuck Berghofer on bass and
Chuckster.
Chuckster and Larry Bunker on drums. And for everybody who's my age and younger, if you don't know about Larry Bunker, check out Larry Bunker, please. Highly, highly, highly underrated. Joe, actually, regarding this track, I actually have like two questions for you. Because Larry was in Bill Evans's trio a couple of years before you, which is also one of my favorite iterations of the Bill Evans trio with Chuck Israels and Larry, and then of course you with Mark Johnson and Bill. When you started with Bill, did you have like any sense that uh, you needed to play sort of like in a vein of like, let's say, Philly Joe or Paul Motion or Larry or Elliot Zygmunt? Uh, that's his name, right? Am I making a mistake right there?
Yeah.
Was there like, did you look at like the lineage of drummers that went through the Bill Evans trio and like did sort of your homework in a sense that he maybe wanted to have something like that in the same vein that the drummers gave at the time, or did he just give you a clean slate and was it like, I want to have what you have to offer?
Well, Bill gave everybody a clean slate. He never wanted the trio to sound like the last trio. What he wanted was for you to be respectful of the direction that he wanted to go in and to bring your own personality to it. And in terms of Bill's trio, uh, all great drummers. I mean, all the people you mentioned. Jack DeJohnette was in that group. Joe Hunt played in that band. Arnie Weiss. There's so many. He had a lot of different drums. I think if there was a stigma at all attached to any part of that trio, it would have been to the bass. Because let's face it, Scott LaFaro didn't just make his mark in that trio. He made his mark on the legacy of jazz bass playing forevermore. And quite frankly, as much as I love Paul Motion, Scott LaFaro was the model for me with that group. That's who I modeled my drumming after. And obviously, you can't play the drums like a string bass, but what I was attracted to was the way he immediately could interact with Bill on a couple of different levels, like melodically, rhythmically, and was always like kind of pushing him on a little bit, just kind of egging him on. So I kind of modeled myself after Scott LaFaro, if that's even conceivable. I loved all the drummers that played with him, but honestly, that thought never occurred to me, and I was grateful when I discovered that he didn't want it to sound like somebody else. He wanted the trio to have its own personality.
Hmm. Hmm. And so, like, I've next to Bill Evans, um, you just mentioned like you played in trio with Jimmy Rolls. 2 weeks ago, we actually showed with a track where Putter was playing with you and Alan Broadband. Like, it seems that people really call you for trio stuff. I've seen you with John Beasley and Ben Shepherd playing trio at Sam First. Is like the format of piano trio? Is that sort of like a passion of yours, or like a passion within the music, or doesn't isn't it doesn't make any difference to you, like playing in a piano trio or playing in a quintet with your guys or big bands?
I don't know that it makes that much of a difference. I almost didn't take the gig with Bill, quite frankly,
Mm,
because I didn't want to travel anymore back then. But once we had played a couple of gigs, and I started to really feel like, okay, I'm a lucky son of a gun to even be on the stage with this cat. So don't be stupid. But I mean, I get the same enjoyment out of playing with a variety of different bands. It just depends on the musicians, right? I mean, clearly Bill Evans will stand above everybody in my catalog because, let's face it, he was a giant. And I've played with a lot of great musicians, but I've only played really with one actual giant, and that's him.
mm,
But in terms of my preference, it's wide ranging. It really is.
right. Right. Well, that sums it up to me.
Wow. I love hearing that Scotty influenced you so much, and it makes a lot of sense when I hear the recordings you made with Bill. Is there a particular Bill Evans record with Scotty that just is one of your top ones? I'm just curious.
Well, if I was going to pick one, I mean, the new jazz, not new jazz conceptions. The first one was Scott, which was Portrait in Jazz,
Portrait in Jazz is probably my favorite.
because they are on the brink of discovery of what that trio is going to become. And if you listen to a track like um, Autumn Leaves, you can hear that they have finally discovered something in terms of a direction, And with Bill, it was never about you lay out here or you. It couldn't be like that. He just wanted a commitment from three musicians, I mean two including himself, that would allow the music to grow naturally. And that's what happens. And if you hear that track of Autumn Leaves, it starts out with the arrangement, and that was something that Bill would always do. He would always fully form an arrangement. And I was so happy to hear. We had Terry Lynn Carrington at our jazz forum yesterday at Cal Arts, and it was fantastic. I was so happy to hear her say, I'm going to paraphrase this, but she said he feels comfort in structure, right? She feels like she can really be free in structure, and that was Bill's thing.
Mm-hmm.
He put that arrangement together, and that was done. Now you didn't have to worry about that ever again, and what you could really focus on is the creativity, and that's what's happening there. So I don't want to spoil it for anybody. If you haven't heard this track, what you're going to hear is the band play the melody in this fully formed arrangement, and then he gets stripped down bare to like just Bill, and then Scott kind of worked his way in a little bit with some stuff, not walking, just kind of interacting, and then Paul does the same thing, something here, something there. It gradually grows into them just swinging their asses off, and so that's how they differed from so many groups, because so many other groups at the time, particularly piano trios, they would have played that melody and then they'd gone right straight to the four on the floor, that solid groove, which everybody loves. But they were figuring out a way to actually build it. And within that context, right, you hear Bill building his solo through, maybe only playing with one hand or gradually working the other hand in and then block chording it for the last, There are ways in which three musicians can make so much happen, and that's what they discovered. And the model that they came up with back then in 1960 still being used today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was probably one of my aha moments, that record, and hearing Autumn Leaves, because it's the first band on the record, and it just blew me away. And it was because a teacher told me, and I hadn't really checked out Bill yet. I was maybe 16 or 17, and they said, get Portrait in Jazz and it'll change you. And that record still is one of my top. So thanks for sharing that insight, Joe. Yeah, very good.
Cool. Yeah. Should we do one more, guys? One more track to finish it. I don't know how you're with your time, Joe.
I am at your disposal.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll do two more then.
Careful what you wish for.
Exactly. I wanted to actually listen to put on something that's cool for everybody who's listening with us. One of the tunes that you're actually playing on yourself, which is Tune Up on Conte Candoli's album, Continuity.
So before you start that, I just wanted to say, because to back up to that Pete Jolly album.
Yeah, we didn't talk about it.
Exactly, yeah.
I got that record when I was in high school. I used to play along with that. Now that we're talking 1964, 65. Now we cut to 1987. I moved to LA, and who do I get to play with? Pete Jolly and Chuck Berghofer. Chuck's on this record you're about to play. Chuck and I have logged a lot of miles together, man, and I guarantee you today he could cut that tempo again without breaking a sweat.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing that I wanted to that I wanted to mention, like we spoke with Jeff Hamilton about Bunker as well, and we showed a track of Bunker doing trades with Shorty Rogers' group with the Giants, and he's playing, and also on this one, like, he's playing all of this hip shit. Excuse my Dutch, and Hammer asked him like, man, how did you come up with all of that stuff? Booker was like, I don't know, man. I was just, playing all of that stuff back in those days. But like I could hear on the trades like how like rhythmically how Pete Jolly was playing, but also like in pitch wise that Larry would use that immediately to create his own trades, like the foundation of his trades, and the way how he's playing like under Chuck, like how he's using the right symbol, how he's just comping in general, and it's such a pity to me that he is so overlooked oftentimes, because like even Shelley gets often overlooked. Like this is something that we talked about with Peter, that like it seems that Mel has the popularity and everybody talks about Mel to a certain extent. But then you look at Shelley, and you look at Larry Bunker, and you look at people like Chuck Flores and all of that, and nobody seems to talk about those guys anymore.
Well, I mean, since you've opened that door,
Yes.
it's because those guys were not controversial, right? I mean, think about a guy like Shelly Manne who did everything that it's possible to do in music with drums. I mean, one of the greatest jazz drummers, that's without question. Has done more movie soundtracks, television shows, you name it, than anybody else ever, and probably will do. That's a given. Owned his own club. He helped more musicians get their foot in the door in this town than just about anybody you can imagine, right? But there are no skeletons in his closet, right? So that's why they don't often get talked about. You can say the same thing about Larry Bunker. It's easy to overlook these guys because they're not controversial. The people that seem to stick out more are the people that maybe have had problems or created problems. Now, I'm not saying Mel created problems, but he certainly had his own opinions, and and was I think a lot pushier about his own ability than Shelley or Larry would ever have been. So I mean, I love Mel's playing, have great respect for him, but he had a pretty high regard for himself. So
Yeah.
that's fine. That's totally
Yeah. Yeah, he was pretty convinced of himself for sure. And then I'm putting it lightly if I'm like if I'm watching some of the interviews that are on YouTube right now with Lauren Schoberg, like he pretty much has like a very stubborn opinion about lots of things, lots of different people, lots of different kinds of music, especially then in the late 80s. Then there was this one excerpt of Lauren's interview that was about Baby Dodds, and Baby Dodds plays a solo, and he plays like the bass drum, completely through the solo, 4 on the floor. And the first thing that Mel says is like, all of those young kids, they don't know how to play the bass drum anymore like that. All those young kids, they can't play bass drum like that.
Yeah. And just to finish that first topic, there's also the aspect of being on the West Coast. And let's face it, the jazz press has always neglected what's going on out here.
Yeah.
So those are probably the reasons why you don't hear more about Larry Bunker. And then of course Larry, after Bill Evans, he lived most of his life in the studios here in Los Angeles playing. The last time I saw him was on a date. So that's just how it goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was
Probably
in
same
my
for,
house
oh, sorry.
when I was in my first marriage. I was living in Phoenix, Arizona, and it was around 1982 or 83, and the Paris concerts had just been released posthumously, right? Well, I'm in my kitchen and the phone rings and I pick it up and the guy says, "This Joe LaBarbera?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "This is Larry Bunker, and I'm just calling to tell you that Bill Evans owes you three beats." You know, this is how we met, right? So I said, "What are you talking about, Larry?" He says, "Oh man," he says, "you know what I'm talking about. If you listen to your solo on Beautiful Love, you were right on the form all the way through there, man. And Bill came in three beats early, you know."
Wow. Amazing.
Most of the, I get the impression that most of those
Great
guys
story.
also had like a pretty good sense of humor, like Shelley and Larry.
Shelley's sense of humor is it's unbelievable. I mean, yeah, yeah. There are so many things. Unfortunately, they're the ones I want to tell you I can't do on the air.
Maybe we can use that for the after talk a little bit.
A great sense of humor. Yeah, and I think most of the great musicians do have a great sense of humor. Bill had a great sense of
Yeah.
humor. It's just that, you know, his image was such that, you know, it's this troubled guy or this reclusive guy. You know, he had a great sense of humor. Great sense of humor. We were in Orly, either Charles de Gaulle or Orly Airport. I forget which one. We had just finished like a backbreaking long tour, and we're at the airport at like, you know, 5 o'clock in the morning, just waiting for something to open up so we can get some breakfast. And finally, and we're completely loopy. We're waiting for our flight home, and so the place opens up. Where the only three people in there were Americans in a restaurant at the airport in France, and now we got to order. And so Bill takes over. I got this. We want to have some eggs. You know, oh, she gets okay again, and we want some bacon too. You know, you start speaking like a pig. Oh, she gets that too. Then so Mark turns to me and says, "All right, let's see how he handles home fries."
Wow,
Oh my God.
that's great. That's great. Well, as I said before we did some after talk from the Pete Jolly track, let's take a listen to "Tune Up" with Conte Candoli, and this features Joe on drums, Chuck Berghofer on bass, and I forgot who's the piano player.
John Lundgren.
John Lundgren.
There we go. So here we go, "Tune Up" with Conte Candoli. Yeah, Joe.
Great.
I think we did that at Capitol Records, I'm pretty sure.
Oh,
Yeah, a thing that popped into my mind actually, which I actually never have asked you, and sorry for everybody who's watching this, but this is kind of like a drum technical question, and it's more or less about like your technique and how you developed your technique, because it seems like you're really holding the sticks in a sort of like very light way, and your sound is also like pretty light, and it seems to me that the sound that you're getting out of the drums is the thing that everything in your playing is based on. Like your sound fills the room. So where did this, where did your technique come from? This like very light technique, and you're holding it. I don't have a drumstick at my disposal right here, but you're holding it sort of like in the nook of your knuckles. That does it make sense what I'm referring to?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, my grip is typically like this, though.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
You know, it probably comes from the fact that when I have two brothers that are musicians, and we used to play together a lot. But then they went off to college, and I was left home for 3 years with nobody to play with. So I played along with records constantly. And back then, the record player we had I think 1.5 watts of power, right? So in order for me to actually be able to play along records like that, Pete Jolly Trio, for example, right? I had to play very quietly, very intently, and really like zero my ear in on the sound. As limited as it was, that's what I had to work with. So
Yeah.
that could be part of the reason. I always think
Right.
I'm too loud. I always think I'm playing too loud when I'm playing, but other people have a different opinion.
Yeah, I beg to differ.
Yeah.
I agree. You're not.
Yeah.
That's great. Nice to hear you with
Yeah.
Conti. And
Yeah.
more recent, I guess. 90s, right? Was that from the 90s?
Yeah, somewhere in the '90s, we did
Yeah.
two records. We did that. We did Portrait of a Count, and then
Okay.
of course we did the records with Bud Shank, with the Sextet, with Bill Perkins.
Yeah. And nice to hear Jan Lundgren in that setting. A really fine soloist, another musician a lot of people pass over, especially in this style. I mean, he can play anything to me, but it's really nice to hear his vocabulary with you guys and his extensions on what he's doing. Really cool.
He's a real student of the music. I mean, he plays
Yeah,
all the styles.
you can hear it in his playing, and every time I hear it, I'm like, wow, he's so good. You think you know one shade of his what he can do, and he can amaze you every time.
Well, that's a mistake that we can all make with artists, right? You hear somebody and you think, okay, I know what that person can do. Well, you
Right.
don't really. You only know what you're hearing based on that particular track,
That's right.
or night out, right? You really need. Everybody deserves further listening if you're serious about it, right? I mean,
Hmm.
that's just the way it goes.
Absolutely.
Right on. Again, wise words. It seems that we have a lot in this episode, a lot of wise words.
Yes.
Who said something?
Yeah. Why don't we finish it off with this bass trumpet player who we mentioned, Cy Tauf, because it's also like cool to play something underground. I never heard of this guy before. I looked up the lineup for this recording for this track, and Chuck Flores is playing on drums, who's also another one of the great West Coast drummers from back in the day. And let's not forget about Jack Sperling, and we basically had them. Like those are big five in my opinion: Sperling, Flores, Mel, Bunker, and who else? Who am I forgetting?
Shelley.
Flores. Yeah,
Right.
Shelley, of course, Shelley. And then let's not forget about Nick Ceroli. So let's call, like the big six
Oh,
for
there's
lack.
man. I mean, that list could be expanded upon, man, because there's been so many great drummers from this part of the world. They just don't get the press. That's all.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Hear you on
Nick,
that.
Nick, Nick Martinez, for example. Nick Martinez.
Nick's another great one. Chuck Flores did a lot of great recordings that I owned we owned, my brothers and I, as kids, and this is a good example. Cy Tuff, as I mentioned before we went on the air, was a bass trumpet player, but I believe he played trombone in Woody Herman's Herd. Possibly he just played B flat trumpet. I'm not 100% sure, but he was on Woody's band, as was Chuck Flores and probably some other guys in this group. Is it Leroy Vinegar on bass again in this one?
Yeah, I think so. And Hammer is watching too, and he's saying Stan Levy. Totally forgot about Stan Levy too. That he's one of those guys as well.
Yep.
So let's take a listen to Cy Tuff with his octet. I believe that this track is an octet recording. Yeah, it's Sand Man.
I love Chuck's trading on that.
Josh, I think the live video has ended on
Oh,
Facebook.
look at that. Weird. It just stopped.
Yeah,
Oh, never happened
but
before.
Clearly, they've had enough of me.
yeah, or us.
Well, I'll restart it so we can sign off here. One
Yeah,
second. That's the first time it's just stopped.
yeah. Well,
Thanks for
no
telling me.
worries. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I'm keeping an eye out on my extra
Yeah,
screen
it just
here on
must
the
have just
iPad.
stopped.
What I liked about those trades is that
Yeah.
it was it, he opted to just do left hand independent
Yeah.
solos. Just keep the time going, and
Yeah,
that's something that a lot of drummers did back then. But not everybody. Not everybody.
yeah,
Right. We're live again, Kev.
yeah. I saw it,
Okay.
and yeah,
Yeah, sorry about that, everybody. I'm not really sure what happened there, but
I
little
think
technical
I think
snafu.
Jeff Hamilton had something to do with it.
Probably.
I'm sure he pulled the plug on me.
Well,
yeah,
I felt really lucky to get to play with Chuck before he passed away in a small group at the Union. He had a rehearsal band for a long time, and Ron Stout was a part of it. And I dared bring a small group chart in, and I was just starting to get into writing. And it was so bad, Joe. It was just, it didn't go well. And Ron was like, "Oh, it's okay. You just need to check out these records, da da da, do this." And Chuck was so sweet. He just said, "Well, you still sound great, even though the chart's not so good. Next time it'll be better. Just go listen to those records Ron told you about."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, teenager, but good lesson,
We
good
all have to
lesson for me."
start somewhere, right?
Right? Yeah.
Just do it, and that's what we were referring to earlier. About the ability to maybe go out and not be perfect that for a while. To
Right.
gotta we all have to learn somewhere and somehow. So
I think Bill
yeah,
Evans said something like that in one of the biographies I read about his perception of not having everything together all at the beginning, and there's this struggle or this story that you have to come to yourself through whatever means possible. And he appreciates musicians that kind of have had to move through something to get somewhere.
that's absolutely true. I mean, he spoke about that whenever that topic would come up because you know he always used to refer to prodigious talents that maybe were able to sound really good at a young age and had the ability to maybe imitate something that they had heard but not fully understand what it's about, whereas in his own particular case it was not that way. He always used to say he had to build it step by step by step.
Mm-hmm.
He was willing to take the time to do it. So
Incredible. Well said. What do you think,
guys,
Kev?
it's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah,
But
let's call it.
yeah. We're gonna finish it up for the remaining viewers also, but and also because this is gonna go on YouTube on our YouTube archive. So Joe, from me and from Josh as well, like thank you so much for all of these like great tracks that you showed, and like sharing your musical wisdom and your knowledge of history also with us. Like I highly appreciated like the time that you took to talk with us and to have fun with us geeking out over all of these recordings. So thank you for that.
you're welcome. I enjoyed it too, guys. Really, thanks so much for inviting me, and I look forward to seeing your future broadcasts.
Yes, for sure. For everybody who's watching on Facebook, we have the week off for next week, and then we will be back the week after. So we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. On behalf of myself and Joe LaBarbera and Josh Nelson, we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you, Joe.
All right, see you guys.
Okay.
All right.
We're clear. Sorry about that, man. I don't know what happened there. Weird.
That's okay.